Hey, welcome to Boundary Bust, a show where we take control of the Sora and place them basically anywhere we want to try and find secrets and discoveries in one of our favorite games. Just kidding. That's She Says' bit. Dude's pretty cool. I'm a bit surprised he hasn't done KH3 yet, but then again, most fans already have access to at least some of the KH3 Out of Bounds experience. But anyway, welcome back everybody. So I just recently finished up the Remind review, nearly 2 years late, but whatever. That video was a ton of work, so I figured today we'd just take it easy and explore some off-limits KH3. Actually, this is a video I wanted to do since I first wrote that Remind script, mostly within days of the DLC's release. Funny enough, in that video, I had this to say.
Well, I can see myself never using that again.
Now, in that same video, I used the data greeting in multiple clips for that rewind section of the review. You know, where KH3 practically forced me to write a fanfic, since there is so much unpresented story progression. Anyway, that was my reaction when first seeing data greetings, but it turned out to be my absolute most favorite part of the DLC, but only because of an unintentional side effect. Using these platforms, we can clip through any invisible wall, so in the nearly 2 years since the DLC's been out, I visited these data greeting sets for countless hours. Now, I'll probably not come across anything someone else hasn't already found, but that's fine. I'm just exploring for the fun of it. So to start out, we'll hit up the Gleaming Town itself. Twilight Town. This is the first place I tried out this rotating platform method to go beyond our allotted space. This area that would lead us to Market Street would be the easiest, but they put a warp back here instead of an invisible wall. Strange decision. So, way back in the back, on top of this roof, should be our best bet. The neat thing about data greeting is we can save our position by placing a character to warp to and saving in one of the available slots. So now that we're free, there's one area I've been dying to check out, and it's the station. Now, as we can see by Sora sliding down the roof, this all has collision. Makes sense as there's plenty of cutscenes taking place here, and I assume that helps with animation. The ground here is raised by a couple feet though, so that's kind of odd. Same with some of these rooftops. We can climb all the way up the station tower. What a view. From here, we can see a giant coliseum. There's an invisible wall blocking from below, but a high glide will bring us over that wall. The floor is super high here. I'm not sure if this building is even visible in the game. Here, we get a great view of the houses down below, with a few pretty wide streets. I never knew this humble town could house so many residents. But not too far out, we start to see a more rural side of town. Fields as far as the eye can see, with more spread out clusters of buildings. This is also a pretty mountainous landscape. Unfortunately, we can't land on the hills. Though I did find a house lodged within the cliffside. Imagine living here. So here, we can see the area known as the Sandlot in KH2. There's not much detail, and unfortunately, all the ground areas can't be stood on. That is with the exception of the Market Street path. Sora, Donald, and Goofy walk this road in a cutscene, but it's otherwise inaccessible. Until now. This is, of course, the most detailed out-of-bounds area. Leaving the station doesn't leave us any ground to stand on, falling through after a short slide. I suspect the usual spot would be somewhere around here. The pillars holding up the tracks are all solid, and the tracks themselves can be stood upon. Close enough. We can see its structure down below. These frames can't be walked through though. But the train has no problem going through. Let's get hit by it. So the train luckily goes right through us. And doesn't bother to stop like the tram does. These tracks go out pretty far, and here is a spot where they don't exactly line up. Wonder how that train will do here. Oh, it despawns before even getting close. Following the tracks around the mountain, we loop back to the station. And we can see where the trains pull in. A brick wall. Here's the other side. So another cool piece of solid geometry is the wall. And following around it, we find that sewer hatch, completely detached from its usual environment. We're blocked from going on top, though we can go inside. It's pretty normal here. I try and go through this grate, but it still counts as a solid wall, despite being able to see through it. Though I do find a workaround by going under everything. Here's an inside view of that Coliseum. Then this dark block that holds the sewer section. No collision here. I do manage to get on top of the hatch section, though there's not much to see. Okay, let's load into the other Twilight Town. The mansion area doesn't give us much space to run around in regularly, but using our platform trick at these invisible walls here, we can enter this courtyard area. Jumping this wall, we can see the back of the building where the textures start acting up. They'll go super blurry, but eventually come back. The ground back here is solid, but this cutout here is strangely inaccessible. Jumping from this wall, we can get to higher ground, with help from a platform. But jumping from this rooftop, we hit an invisible ceiling. Though that can be overcome with a slanted roof. From here, it's possible to get to the highest part of the house. Pretty neat. From up high, we can see the station and that Colosseum, though the rest of the town is gone. The tower is still accessible, and I found some weird smoke animations lingering behind. The track here is limited. Back in the mansion's yard, we know the game won't let us enter the woods area. But it's all still there, and in normal working order. Strange they'd block us out for photo mode. Here's that sewer hatch again, though it warps us pretty quickly. The woods stretch out kinda far, but then we hit a wall. If we get on top, we can follow it. Though it has some gaps. Then this odd mismatch here. And here's the edge of it, almost flush with the surrounding mountains. This arch seems to be solid. Okay, enough Twilight. Radiant Garden. Radiant Garden was my second attempt, and I was stoked to try it out. Our weak point is this path to the gardens, and I was afraid to land at first, but it turns out the ground is pretty solid for at least most of this area. We can walk along the houses, and in this more open area is where the floor drops out. I found that this wall is solid, so it takes us towards the castle gates. We can stand just on the other side of the gate, but unfortunately, we fall through the stairs, so exploring the castle isn't looking very promising. Using that same wall, we gain access to the other side of town. We have a little bit of solid ground here, even among the houses. But we'll have to be careful, because our floor ends without warning. Following this road, we see none of these houses have collision. So it's a dead end, huh? Well, not quite. Passing through this wall will bring us to a more familiar area, though lacking some of the detail. And would you look at that? It's Merlin's house. The ground is solid here, though we do sink into his patio out front. Inside, we see that there is no inside. And Merlin apparently has these waterfalls in his backyard. The path to the fountain court fails us, and the city ends here. But if we fly high above Merlin's house, we see a few scattered houses, and only one of these is solid. So this is the best spot I could find to try and get some altitude. So we fly through these gears to the castle's front. Here's the stairs. And not even this gate has collision. At least we get a good look at the entrance. Around the side, we find the surrounding wall. And not only can we not land on it, it disappears as we get close. Though there is one solid place we can land on, near the town's entrance. Falling through here brings us to the other side of the waterway gate. And here's the other side. It looks like that's all of Radiant Garden we can explore. Though we do get access to Sid's computer, there's really not much to see here. But if we break through the wall, we get access to this little bit of ground behind Xehanort's door. We can exit the digital realm and view it from a distance. It's in this cool dome shape. It's a long way down. Getting dizzy yet? Back at the Destiny Islands, the very first place I entered in data greeting, only to be disappointed with how limited it is. Though we do have a bit more to check out now. We can go to the other side of that bridge, and even walk in the water. This beach actually stretches out pretty far. And here, we see the solid sand floor starts to slope downward. And we finally reach the edge. The water texture keeps going though. But there's no reason for us to keep going. Here's the back of the island. And strangely, the solid ground ends just shy of the island. We can see the extent of that cave. And here's that spot Titus plays at. It's looking much smaller now that we've grown up. Oh, and we can't land. Unfortunately, we fall through this boardwalk. We can't even stand in the spring. And there's no getting into this cave. Here's where Selphie likes to sit. And we can see the treehouse. Here's the inside of the shack. Though it can't bring us up top. We can get to the pawpaw tree, but it locks us in. I load the other set of Destiny Islands, fully expecting it to be the same. But this one doesn't even give us access to the platform tools. Let's head to the dark side of Destiny. So we're given 3 Realm of Darkness sets to choose from, but they're all basically the same, so we'll just explore the first one. So we can break through the wall just about anywhere. And a lot of this ground will be solid. But only some of the rocks are. There's a faint line where the collision floor ends. And there's not really much to see past there. We can enter the water, and we find the spire is solid, so let's glide up it. So I try and land on another, but the other ones can't support us. Our dark haze leaves us if we go far enough. So I'll try that long rock again, and yep, it's definitely the only solid one. It's a shame. I was hoping to work my way up top. Falling through the ground will have an unfortunate side effect. Sora will fall forever, essentially soft-locking the game. There is hope though. A giant solid cube below the Land of Darkness. This time, I'll head for that sun. We can see right where that haze ends. And we're nearing the edge of the ocean. Now it's just Sora and the sun. Here's a zoomed out look of it all. I wonder how close we can get. So eventually, we break through the skybox, and we can see the reverse side of the sun. But now, we're in pure nothingness. Even Sora disappears. So let's reappear at the Keyblade Graveyard. Oh, nothing. Just chillin' with my bros. So KH3 gave us a pretty small Keyblade Graveyard to run around in. At least outside of the ruins. But it turns out, it's actually quite massive. Upon breaking free, we can get right up close to those Keyblades. Real cool. Sora can practically pick one up. The jagged cliffs can all be scaled. And here's an aerial view of that valley. Just be careful. It's easy to get stuck over on this side. Back on the other side, it's amazing to me that all of this land is traversable. The ground slopes upward, and we continue our climb. We can gradually elevate ourselves by jumping to various mountaintops. And suddenly, I'm on a quest to reach the highest one. And I think I've made it. This view is incredible. So I'm flying my normal speed, but I feel like I'm going super slow. That's just how massive this level is. Even freefall takes some time. So this is near where I got stuck at, but we're safe over here. This is the area that we walk to begin our series of cutscenes, so we never really get to explore it. Here, I find a floating rock. Strange. And the ground tends to shift as we approach it. Really weird. There's just an incredible amount of land to cover. So further on, past all the shifting sands, I can float. And I get an idea. Can I make it across all these isolated islands? These are way farther out than they initially seem. But eventually, I make it out to the furthest one. Look how small it makes that gigantic plane look. And by falling down, we can watch the whole world drift away. Scala ed Kaim. So we've got 3 Scalas we can actually explore. Let's start with the normal one in KH3. So crossing the sea to our left, we see that it's not the same district from Remind. All of the DLC's elements are missing. There's nothing to stand on. And we drift below pretty quickly. Over on the other side, there's more of the same. We can use this wall to gain some altitude, but not a whole lot. Further out, we can see the inside of that column. There is a ton of geometry used to make it up. While we're close by, let's check out a neighboring column. It's kinda eerie to me how many people just one of these can house, let alone the 30 other surrounding columns. And yet, we're the only ones here. Anyway, it's much the same, just a bit less detailed. Okay, let's check out the Remind section. The first thing I want to do is see if the KH3 section is the same. And visually, it is. Though when I try and land on that pier, we go right through. The mainland is mostly solid, though a lot of the buildings aren't. Here's the inside of the keyways. So going further out, clockwise, we can reach the Remind section's neighboring district. And we've got plenty of floor here. Going to the edge, we see that some of the ground extends underneath the center structure. And there's a lot of solid objects over here that Sora has a hard time running up. Around the back, there are some spaces we can stand on. And I even found a solid balcony. If we scale this wall, we hit a ceiling. And soaring out will show us that we've actually reached KH3 Scala territory. Going counterclockwise to its neighboring district, we see that it's pretty barren in this map. Most of the column is just these empty blocks. And reaching the edge, we get another inside look at the inside structure, and all the added segments for the Remind section. Underneath the city, I land on some solid black ground. It turns out, this is the ceiling to that underground section of the city. And we can peek in through these grates. But even cooler, we can slide down the stairs to another. This whole section can be walked on. And there's even more grates to peek through. And then, we can land on thin air. I really like these stairs to nowhere. Back behind Mickey, we see this strange colorful object. And when we go into it, there's no getting out. So this is a piece to that machine we interact with in the DLC. I guess it's just stored down below. And then finally, we have a solid path that can lead us to the pillar's center on the Remind side of town. And out over the gates. Okay, let's load into our final area of Scala, the top of the tower. Now this area doesn't look like much, but if we clip through not one, but two invisible walls, the whole world opens up to us. we get a nice view of the top. And there's this strange propeller with a ladder leading to it. None of the inside column is solid, except for this strange dark beam. Turns out to be a whole wall. And take a look at this grass area. So we can glide around the whole destroyed city, which is incredible since we were only meant to see the very top. But what's even cooler is that all of this floating debris has collision. Falling down below, we land above the destroyed ground. And this is all so neat to look at. An invisible wall holds us in, though that's an easy fix. And there's even more solid air beyond here. Diving down below, we reach an open white plain. And we get an incredible view of the entire inner pillar. Here, it looks like I'm flying through that foreboding sky, but actually, this effect is contained within those various objects. Soaring out, we get a good view of the broken city. And the neighboring columns don't seem to have suffered the same damage. Going over to that gondola area, we see that we can actually go inside. And then finally, below the city, we have my favorite section I found. So on the edge of that white plain, we can reach a darker side of town. Many bleak alleyways. A real contrast to the usual white, bright look of the city. And this makes me want to see even more sides of Scala in the future. It's given me sort of Traverse Town vibes. Okay, but that's all Scala ad Caem has to offer. So now, let's take off and visit our final destination. So we get Shibuya as one of our data grading locations. This is incredible, to be on top of the 109 building, and even cooler to leave it. Now there is not a bit of solid ground outside of the roof, so no use in trying to land. But luckily, we can still see a lot with our glide. Here's a good view of the 109 or 104 sign. Below, we get a decently detailed look at the entrance. Further on, we can see the scramble crossing. Here's a view of Center Street. And a nice view of the queue front as well. Over the crossing, we've got the station. No view of Hachiko, unfortunately. Here, we see the tracks only cover a short distance. And past the station, we see a football field on one of the rooftops. Just past here is where the bus terminal would be, but there's no details of it here. Let's head the opposite direction towards Tower Records. There's no notable buildings here, but we can see the road lines disappear. And eventually, cracks start to show up in the pavement. And lastly, we've got the two roads diverging from 109. And there's a lot of cool details to look at. We can actually glide kind of far before respawning. Here, we see the buildings start losing their detail. And the road is just about to end. Fitting, as this is the end of the road for our out-of-bounds experience. There is a lot of cool details to see in the various different worlds, and I'd never expect that we'd be able to explore all this within a console game. I mean, surely it wasn't intentional, but I'm so glad Square Enix hadn't decided to patch it out. This genuinely became my favorite part of the DLC. Now I kinda wish more areas were included. I mean, we do have other zones, just not much of interest in them. I'd love to have seen more of the city of Corona, or the toy box outside, or even a more obtainable way to see the city of Arendelle. But nonetheless, it's been a cool adventure, and thanks for joining me in it. I suppose I'll see you in the next video, so goodbye for now.